Well, that was a swift kick in the junk. Nothing quite like going from the heroics of Jim VP hitting you an incredible game-tying three at the end of regulation to just pooping all over the floor in overtime. And him not taking a shot in overtime. I don't even understand that. How do you go from a situation, Jimmy Butler in the fourth quarter, 5 of 7, 15 points, 4 for 4 from the free throw line. Incredible heroics from him. He does an amazing job. He lifts you to this situation where you have Orlando feeling froggy and you go to overtime and he gives you no shot attempts. How does that happen? How do you allow that to happen as a team where, okay, you feel like you have Bam out on the break, you give him a couple basket attempts, let's go, let's see what he's got. But at some point where overtime is starting to crumble and they're getting their baskets, you need the man who ultimately dictates the pace of the game and slow things down, and they don't give him the basketball. I don't understand that. I don't get it. I don't get the function of that or what went into the process of that. But this man who made this game go a lot longer than it deserved to go because you decide to once again get down in a dicey situation to the Orlando Magic, who are awful. And once again, you go to overtime and need to be in an absolute arm wrestling match with a team that shouldn't be in an arm wrestling match with you, theoretically. And here you are, yet again in a fight for your life, and they just completely work you in OT after getting them to this level. It's tough because, I'd love to come on here again after we did the last one and just say, man, you appreciate Jimmy Butler and appreciate what he's giving you and appreciate what the season has been from Jimmy Butler. And I feel all of that in the same way, but it's also tough to think like, man, has the organization not appreciating what they have in this guy, right? Because this guy has now given you 2 deep postseason runs. 1, lost in 6 in the finals. You did nothing the next year. You let Jay Crowder walk. You thought you could piece it together. It didn't work out. It ended horribly with getting swept in the first round of the Bucks. And that was on what could be argued was a better regular season that Jimmy Butler had his second season with the Heat than his first season with the Heat. That was, one of his real regular season masterpieces, how good he was his second season in Miami. Okay. And I get it. You went and you got his best friend the next year. You went and got Kyle Lowry, who, welcome back, Kyle. Nice fourth quarter for Kyle. Kyle was able to come up with a clutch 3 for Miami and, was okay. It's not like I look at this and say like this game was on Kyle Lowry and this was on his fault. Did they play him, more than I thought they would? Here's the weird thing. It's like you look at Kyle Lowry and he went from his last time we saw him, he couldn't get in a fourth quarter, to Eric Spoelstra is just riding him all the way through and playing him. What do they play him? 36 minutes tonight. It's just a weird thing. And there's a lot of weird things about this whole dynamic tonight and the lineups and all that stuff, which we can get into in a second. But the big thing I want to come out of tonight is you have this guy in Jimmy Butler who is so special. You've been searching for orcas, searching for whales. This guy decides to come down here, right? And has had 2 incredible postseason runs with Miami and has really always had every regular season has been really good with Jimmy Butler. But the efficiency that he's been playing with all year, and especially this recent run that he's been on, which has been unreal, it's tough to stomach as a fan watching everybody around him crumble and not knowing what he's going to have night tonight. He's got no reliable shooting. Doesn't really have, at this point, a reliable second option because, Tyler has been up and down with his consistency. Bam Adebayo, who kind of almost deserves his own little segment here, has not been playing to his capability as of late. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, have been very, very inconsistent. Kyle Lowry's health has been a factor. So the only move that they have made are a bought out Kevin Love and bringing in Cody Zeller. And I'm always a believer of, like, if you feel like you're knocking on the door, if you feel like you really have a chance at this thing, and you have a guy in Jimmy Butler who clearly it can be one of the best postseason players out there. He's one of the best players in the league, just flat out. I think we should just start saying that. And I don't know. It just feels like they were hoping that this year, I don't know, that something was going to click, something was going to come along, and they've just kind of let this year go idly by as Jimmy is trying to put on the Superman cape. He's trying to will it home. He's trying to do what he can do, but it feels like it's just going to end up in colossal disappointment. You watched him today walk off the court. I don't know if he got banged up there at the end or if that was just out of frustration. If it was out of frustration, I don't blame him. I don't blame Jimmy Butler if he walked off that court, walked straight onto the team plane, put up security guards at the front of the plane, and told everybody else to walk home. Because everybody from the coach down to every other player on that roster failed him. And quite frankly, deserves some reflective walking from Orlando down to Miami. And then they can maybe be here by the Jazz game while Jimmy Butler has been waiting. And hopefully he's like, did you guys think about what you did? Did you think about what you did against the Orlando Magic? Have you had a good time to reflect about what you did or did not do against the Orlando Magic? It's frustrating, man. And I would be frustrated if I was Jimmy Butler too. And I think that I don't know if Jimmy Butler's ever going to get to the place where he demands a trade from the Miami Heat, because I do think that there are things that he probably really likes about being in Miami, the city, the idea that it is his organization, it is his team, that they do kind of let him march to his beat. But yeah, I got to imagine a guy who's at the peak of his powers right now has to think, after I went to the finals, our response was not re-signing Jay Crowder. Let's see what we can put together. And they didn't really do anything. They go get Kyle Lowry. That was very much based on what Jimmy wanted. It has not worked out. But here's the thing, when their suggestions don't work out, organizations don't get to pass the buck to the player. They got to figure it out also. You see LeBron with Russell Westbrook. It was his idea to bring it there. The organization had to figure out other maneuvers to try and get stuff around LeBron James. If Kyle Lowry doesn't work out, and it hasn't worked out, the Heat got to figure that out going into it. Like, hey, we gotta figure something else out to get Jimmy Butler help and to help with these windows. And yeah, a big part of that is they are relying on Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero to be that help. And I would say, with Jimmy having these last great 10 games coinciding with, Bam probably having, I would say, his worst 10-game stretch of the season, it's not great, because you're looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, you really need everybody to kind of be humming on the same page and being going at the same time, but it just hasn't been the case. And I don't know, with Bam, I don't know what it is. Like, look, I am a huge fan of the guy, so I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll be straight up about that, but no, he is not. He's been nowhere near what he's capable of playing. I mean, Bam Adebayo has had crossed the 20-point plane twice since the All-Star break. He has cracked 30 once since the All-Star break, that one game against Atlanta, and it's just not good enough. You need more scoring punch from him. You do. And I also don't feel like he has been defending at the same level either. He had that huge performance against Joel Embiid for sure. He has his flashes, but you look at today, and I think part of this was probably a wear down effect, and nobody wants to hear that, but he's playing 42 minutes against the Orlando Magic, and Wendell Carter's either blowing past him or he's got to go chase him out on the 3-point line. Like, he was like toying with Bam in overtime, on top of the fact that Bam couldn't get on the same page with Kyle or Gabe and was, punting the ball into the stands, turning the ball over left and right. So, yeah, it's tough to say this wasn't probably one of Bam's worst performances of the season. And, yeah, he's playing 37 minutes last night, 42 minutes tonight. Is that wear down? Maybe. But that also kind of goes back to the trickle down of, like, what did they do to buoy this roster? They brought back Dwayne Dedman. He was a torpedo. They've been We finally got the debut today of Omer Yurtseven, so maybe that'll be something. You had a first-round pick in Nikola Jovic, who plays in the G League. And you can already start to see that Spoelstra rats off a ship on Kevin Love. Like, Kevin Love played 17 minutes tonight. Like, 17. Think about that. 17 minutes for one of your starters tonight on the second night of a back-to-back. Like, you can already start to see, like, Spoelstra starting him out of respect. But, like, is he really relying upon Kevin Love for anything? I don't think so. Like, the tea leaves already seem to be there that he's going to start backing off of having Kevin Love. And, look, I mentioned this a couple videos ago about the whole Kevin Love thing. I don't think Kevin Love's been awful. I don't think Kevin Love has been, I don't notice aesthetically it being, like, this big hindrance. But it is odd to see that, since they brought him in, and I think everybody kind of thought, well, this is going to be the perfect fit next to man. This is going to be the thing that really works. It really hasn't, though. It hasn't worked out in the same way. And Bam's averaging under 18 points since Kevin's gotten here. And I don't know if 1 + 1 equals 2 there, but it just feels hard to ignore. And all of this has been, been tough because it's like with this team, I get yelled at listeners and people being like, Tobin, why do you continue to believe in this team? Why do they suck you back in? Why do you get suckered? And I don't know. I don't know why I do, because I love the wins so much. The wins are like a drug. And I would rather deal with the frustration feeling of losing and having hope than just not caring. I just feel like you miss out a lot as a sports fan on that. And I do like to watch them night in and night out. And I like the feeling when they win. I like what it gives me. And when they lose, I want to put my head through a wall. But, this team has been so up and down all season. But I just feel like the thing that's been disappointing about since the All-Star break is you have your best player playing his best. And it feels like everybody around him is just coming up woefully short. Everybody has I'm just saying, like, who you can consistently count on night in and night out since the All-Star break besides Jimmy Butler is slim. And then, with Tyler tonight, Tyler apparently was dealing with food poisoning, which I felt like I had after watching overtime. But it was odd. Tyler was just not playing in the fourth quarter and then wasn't playing in overtime. They brought him in, I think, for that one little option when Jimmy hit the game-winning 3, but he really didn't play. They would put him back on the bench. So hopefully he gets right. Caleb Martin didn't play tonight. Duncan Robinson is sick. Omer Yurtseven made his debut tonight, and Cody Zeller broke his nose. So maybe this is the crack for Big Yurt. Big Yurt talks a big game, so this might be the opportunity for him to, crack into the rotation and do some things and show what he's capable of doing. And he has always had a good chemistry with Kyle Lowry. So maybe that can be a thing that works out for them. I don't know. But it is crazy. Like, nights like tonight, you watch this team and you're like, I really just can't believe they have a guy playing as good as Jimmy Butler is. And their thought was to do nothing in the offseason. Did nothing in the offseason. Their thought was nothing. They ended up doing nothing in the offseason. I know that they thought they were going to be in the game for KD. Maybe they could have been a little bit more aggressive on being in the game for Donovan Mitchell. And then at the trade deadline, also just doing zero, other than this Kevin Love buyout, which, the coach seems kind of bored with already, 10 games into the experiment. So I don't know. And if this does end with the Heat losing, they're still in the play-in scenario. If this ends up with them not making the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round, I don't know what the response is. Do they finally go back to the Bradley Beal well? Is Jimmy going to take a long look at this franchise and think to himself, are Bam and Tyler good enough for me to really get over the hump and get to a title? Or does he start putting the bat signal out there? Does he flirt with Joel Embiid to go back to Philly? Does he, swap out with one of the teams in the club? I don't know. I don't think he will. But if he does, If he does, if this ends up going to a bad spot, because it's all ifs, and we still, you don't want to make any drastic predictions as to where they are, because who knows. But if they do end up in a place where Jimmy asks out, I can't really blame him. If this does end up with a disappointing ending to this season, and he gets to the front office and he's like, well, what is our plan? And if they don't really have a good answer for him, how could anybody blame him for that? He did leave at the end, and the refs teed him up. Erik Spoelstra was not pleased about this.
It was a kind of bizarre deal, there was like half a dozen instances we had, with that official. It's neither here nor there. I'm not going to get a fine, and league, you're not going to even think about giving me a fine. But it started off with, that blocking foul where Jimmy took one to the face. Then Cody took another one to the face and broke his nose. And then, our debate about those things seemed to carry over, with the official, and then it became a matching of egos, I guess. But he got the last laugh on that one. The official did.
So there you go. Erik Spoelstra, none too pleased after the game. I knew there was some wires crossed, so apologize for the audio kind of behind it. But look, he's king of that with Erik Spoelstra. It was the one thing that kind of made my night a little bit lighter. I love when Erik Spoelstra threatens the NBA officiating office, where he goes, and he looked dead ass into the camera, and he double finger guns them. He double points, and he goes, "You're not gonna find me." And I just love, because they won't. They won't. If you guys don't know Erik Spoelstra's past of the league, when he says they won't, they will not find him. Like Fred VanVleet, when he just got fined $30K, Fred VanVleet did a dumb thing where he's like, "I know I'm gonna take the fine on this." Like, he volunteers himself. Erik Spoelstra basically pleads not guilty, and then he'll testify. He goes, "League, you're not gonna find me," and then goes on with his complaint. But I just love him so much when it comes to that. Did love some of his decisions tonight, but that did put a smile on my face. And they'll be back on Monday. The Heat have the Jazz coming in and the Grizzlies coming in for what's been basically, what is this? It's basically like an 8-game homestand, except they had to take a little detour up to Orlando. That just detour ended up in disaster.